Right, we're live, right. I just want to welcome everyone to the Health is Wealth podcast. So, yeah, just for the team, just for the clients in the channel, just to let you know, we're going to be doing this bi-weekly, every 2 weeks, where we're going to be discussing different topics. And we want your input. We want your input, guys. If you can let us know, we're going to be taking things from frequently asked questions and covering them on these podcasts. That is going to help you on your fitness journey. That's going to help make things easier, help you navigate things in general. But I just thought I'd just start it off. This is the first one, so might be a bit clunky, but it's the very first podcast. So I just want to give you a bit of my background in evidence-based coaching. So I formed evidence-based coaching back in 2011, yeah. And it wasn't always called evidence-based coaching. It used to be called evidence-based muscle. And the reason why I changed the name is because back in 2018 was when I started working with executives, just guys like yourselves, really busy, and because I found that the name didn't really go with this, because I was mainly coaching competition preparation, things like that. So that's one of the reasons why I changed the name. But just to give you a bit of my background, my journey, my fitness journey. So yeah, my fitness journey started 21 years ago when I was overweight. I was 320 pounds and I lost nearly half my body weight. I lost 140 pounds due to I was obese. I wasn't in a good place. I was depressed. I was lacking confidence. I had high blood pressure. I was pre-diabetic, and I knew I had to change. It was when my girls, my first daughter, well, my two daughters came along, and it wasn't until I moved house that I found out that I had all these problems. So I knew I had to make a change. But it did take me 5 years, and it wouldn't have took 5 years if I knew what I knew now where I'm there compared to then, because things change, obviously, being a coach, helping you guys on your journey. There's been a lot of studying, a lot of certifications, and a lot of, in general, just constantly improving everything within evidence-based coaching as well. So, right, I'm going to pass it on to Gary. Gary can introduce himself, because Gary's our new coach, and Gary is, how long now, Gaz? What, 3 weeks, something like that? 4 weeks?
Yeah,
about a month now.
It's about a month now, yeah.
So I thought I'd put you on to Gary. Gary, can you introduce yourself? Give us a bit of your background, and anyway.
Yeah, so I think hearing Craig's background as well, I think there's a trend, what I see in the industry, and it's most of the good coaches has a story to tell, and they come from a place of empathy, so it's understanding the client and not just because they've gone through it themselves, but my journey itself. So when I was a child, I was quite overweight. Most of my teenage years, I was chubby, etc., etc. And I suppose my journey started when I was 16, when I first joined the gym. And I suppose when I joined that gym initially, I never wanted to get big and bulky. I never wanted to, quote unquote, get too big. Here I am, all them years later, still trying to get, and it still hasn't worked, But yeah, so I kind of stayed away from the weights aspect things because didn't want to get too big, and kind of just headed straight for the cardio. So like that, trial and error over the last, starting on your journey, you go through years of trying different things, all these crazy fad diets, just because you're coming from a place of desperation. You're so desperate to get a result, you'll do absolutely anything, because the pain you're currently facing of not feeling good, you're willing to try everything and do everything. So I suppose, it started really from the age of 16, and I suppose I never knew I had an interest in it until I was kind of looking at what I was researching on the hours that I'd be, have the laptop out and I'd be on. It was a thing years ago. It was actually before Instagram, for Google. It was Google, but it was before kind of all the social media. But It was called Bodybuild. I'm not sure, Craig, whether you know this. Bodybuilding forums. You know, bodybuilding.com. Do you remember the
Yeah,
forums? No?
yeah,
Do you remember that?
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
there was this thing called, you go there to get the information. So like you couldn't just Google about calories or protein. You literally go into the forums and ask questions and hope someone would get back to you in the evidence-based world, or et cetera, et cetera. So basically I spent a lot of my time there. Wild teenager, I know. So that was kind of where I was kind of doing a lot of my own research, and I was just from a place of practicality. It wasn't for anyone else, it was for me. I wanted to get the information so I could apply that on myself. So but that was 16 to 17, 18, 19, and just kind of went through that transformation for myself. And I was working, come from a retail background, so went to kind of got a degree in business management operations. And looking back on it, I made a massive transformation myself in a body composition standpoint, and it gave me the confidence in myself to put myself forward for positions. So I went to kind of a senior role at quite a young age, but looking back in hindsight, it was because I had the confidence in myself, because I went through that transformation change in the body aspect of things, you know. So that was that. And then I was in retail and I just was doing it, and I didn't really enjoy it, you know. So on the side, I was kind of getting the degree in getting qualification in personal training. So I'm relatively new enough to the industry. So it would be in 2020, I got my qualification in personal trainer and gym instructor. And after a year or so in, I felt like I needed to know a bit more. I felt like I'm the type of person who kind of wants to know everything, you know, as such. Obviously, we're always going to be learning, but I want to be the best coach I can be. So after a year or two in, I went and then done precision nutrition, which kind of a next step up in terms of the nutritionist aspect of things. And it was 2 years ago then, I kind of was on looking at Googling around, and there was a evidence-based nutrition that kind of ticked all the values that I live by, macronutrition. And at the end of you become a qualified nutritionist. So I enrolled for that. And yeah, look, it was a lot of study and balancing and stuff, you know. So I was actually working with Craig 2 years ago, and obviously I was trying to study and do all the qualifications, and it was just too much. So I had to just get them exams out of the way, so then I could park it, so then I can come back with Craig. So I suppose that's where we're up to speed. So I can only take one step back, two steps forward. So fast forward now, I am qualified nutritionist and now helping alongside Craig, right hand man for Craig in evidence-based coaching. And yeah, the sky's the limit. We're going to transform as many lives as we possibly can in the future, and leave our mark on the industry and leave the industry in a better place than how we found it. Because there's so much, there's so much misinterpretations out there, and people giving out wrong advice, and just so much shiny object syndrome. We live by the evidence-based coaching mantra, and it's a longer route of doing things, but ultimately it's the best route for people, to get to a result and sustain the long term. So that's kind of my pitch. That's kind of my background story. I hope you understood the Dublin accent. Sometimes we speak it.
Excellent, Gaz.
Yes.
Love it,
So, yeah.
Gaz. Fantastic. Right, I'll move on to Greg.
All right. Hey, everyone. So Greg Powell, I've been working with Craig now for just over 2 years. And over that time period, kind of have lost a lot of weight, gotten in a lot better shape. So, I think the results have been amazing. But with respect to my background, I guess kind of similar themes to, kind of what you're hearing from others is, so when I was growing up, I was like, the fat kid or, kind of overweight and so on, wasn't terribly athletic. And so didn't do a lot of sports or that kind of stuff, focused a lot more on academics and jobs and so on. And over the years, my weight kind of yo-yoed, up and down a fair amount, lost a bunch of weight right before I got married. When my kids were first born, I have two boys that are now in their early 20s. And so when they were first born, I lost about 60 pounds. So I went from 240 pounds to 180 at the time. Partially because I needed to qualify for like life insurance and not have to pay like ridiculous premiums and things like that. At one point, you know, I met with my doctor and I had really high cholesterol, and she said, "Oh, well, I want to put you on a cholesterol drug." And I said, "For how long?" And she said, "The rest of your life." And I was like, "Is there some other alternative?" And she's like, "Well, you could like lose some weight." I was like, "How about I try that?" And so anyway, so I had these like periods where, you know, I would, you know, be really diligent and, you know, lose weight and exercise more and watch what I was eating and things like that. But inevitably, you know, things would kind of drift, you know, kind of back upwards. And so over that time period, you know, I've kind of fluctuated a lot. You know, I think that's kind of a common phenomenon. But I think the reason for that is because I didn't have, you know, good information to work with. You know, there's just like so much, you know, you kind of read articles or you just hear, you know, kind of conventional wisdom, if you will, or there's like the latest fad for different things. And so it's sort of hard to know sometimes, you know, what to follow or how to do it. And then also I would just say, I have this goal to lose this much weight or whatever, and then I would just do that, but I wouldn't necessarily be focused on like, how is it that I can turn this into a long-term behavior change. It was just more about like, what do I need to do to like hit this goal as quickly as possible without really worrying about sustainability, if you will. And what I ended up finding is that all of the things that I was doing were like not that sustainable. And so inevitably, you know, it's not the big surprise that I'd like put weight back on or kind of drift back. So one of the things that I've, you know, found in my journey is just, you know, to what Gaz was saying is that it's, you know, part of it's educating yourself, you know, part of it is also kind of taking the long view on this, is to kind of say, you know, what I'm really trying to do here is set up, you know, kind of sustainable change within my life, you know, something that I can kind of maintain and embrace over a long period of time. And so, you know, at this point, I'm, you know, 2 years into it. I just turned 50, you know, a few months ago, and you know, just kind of looking forward to a lot of things to come here, but really making this part of my life and, you know, my lifestyle, as opposed to just something that I'm doing to, you know, hit a goal or hit a number, and then move on to something else. So that's kind of where I'm at least within my journey.
Excellent. Thanks, Greg. Brilliant story. Thank you for sharing. And last but not least,
Yeah,
and something I want to announce as well, new coach, new evidence-based coaching coach, John.
awesome.
So
Awesome.
John's
Yeah,
started as one of our coaches, our success coaches here at Evidence-Based Coaching, and he's worked hard. He's worked very hard in achieving it. Greg's doing the same thing. You know, I've got to give Greg recognition as well. Greg's doing his certifications as well. But I just thought I don't want John to lose the spotlight here. So, John, it's your
sorry,
turn,
I
buddy.
almost cut you off there. I thought we were just going to roll into it, so sorry about that. But yeah, not incredibly different from, again, just to kind of reiterate what Greg was saying, not incredibly different from what everybody else here has been through. There was a period of my life where I've experienced for my own body frame, you know, a significant amount of obesity for what, you know, I could handle for my body size, and also kind of this yo-yo behavior where I was convinced at one point that the secret to losing weight would be to starve myself and just run a lot, right? Like that was really what I thought. And for what it's worth, that did work for a very short period of time. So what I would have a habit of doing is, when I remember distinctly in 2016, I made a goal of running a marathon. And I decided, in order to train for that marathon, I was going to run an ungodly amount of miles, and also eat something like 1,200 calories a day for like 3 months, and lost a remarkable amount of weight, which included also a remarkable amount of muscle, I could only imagine. And I hit my goal poorly, may I add. And And obviously, I think within about 5 to 10 minutes of getting across that finish line, limping across that finish line, I remember looking at everybody around me who was there to cheer me at the finish line and saying, "All right, guys, let's go get some food." And I remember gaining about, I believe it was 80 pounds in 8 months that I gained from the finish line of that marathon. And it was it was just I just brought it all back in and didn't embrace anything that was particularly sustainable. So and then which kind of, fast forward to the point where I decided I really needed an expert to speak with. It's where I connected with you, Craig, and we're approaching 3 years, 2 years, 9 months, something like that.
Yeah, nearly 3 years, John.
Yeah, yeah, and we started having that conversation about what it looked like, and when I came to Craig, I was at a point where my markers weren't good, my blood pressure, my sugar levels, there was my cholesterol. It was all not looking great, and a similar conversation with my own doctor about what were next steps. And it's funny that you mentioned that the way you did, Greg, where you said your doctor said, well, you could also lose weight after the discussion of the medication. So I think that's very interesting, and it's a very common thing that you might see here in the States, as far as the sale of the medication first before before the advisement of changing your habits. So that happened. I reached out to Craig, and I had never actually picked up a weight in my life. I'd never held in my hand a dumbbell. And at the age, I think, of just about 42, I decided that I was going to purchase a set of dumbbells and kind of start that process, and learning how to actually being educated on how to exercise, proper form, something that I thought I wouldn't like. I became, not only did I enjoy it, I became addicted to it. And really enjoy the act of strength training and building muscle. And Craig, you coached me to a point where I felt like I was at a nice low body weight, and I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, I've never built muscle before, and I don't have any muscle. So, well, and I shouldn't say it that way, but I was like, I want to build some more muscle. So over the next year, you coached me into a muscle building phase, and that also helped me between helping me change my habits and the muscle building phase. I went through a hip replacement, and I felt the better for it, right? And I feel great after going through that. And I don't think I would have. So all of that, and then going into a muscle building phase, and then going back into a deficit phase, and really being educated on what all that means, and what where we go from here, and how I help others do it, and getting so much enjoyment out of that process that I feel like I would like to talk to other people about getting addicted to a healthy lifestyle. So that's where I'm coming from. Starting from nothing, getting something, and then wanting to give that something to others.
Excellent, John. Brilliant. Yeah, and like John and Greg, you've both done amazing on the journey. Greg's like absolutely doing everything. 75 hard, you name it, Greg's doing it. But yeah, and one thing I would like to get in about evidence-based coaching, and one of the reasons why I decided to do it, not just because on the back of my own transformation, was back in the time when I first started my journey. It was something called If It Fits Your Macros. And I was always scared. I was always a meal plan guy or really cut carbs. And like Gary was talking about, non-stop cardio, 3 hours a day of cardio to lose weight and very low calories. But then I came across what is called If It Fits Your Macros, and that's exactly what it is. Basically, you set your macronutrients like your carbs, protein, and fats, and calories at a certain level, and you eat whatever you want. Basically, you eat anything that fits. In other words, hence the name If It Fits Your Macros, and it works, and it works. And this is why we don't like evidence-based coaching. A meal plan is a last resort. A meal plan, because the reason why we don't like to give meal plans is because we want to educate our clients, you all, around nutrition. We want you to be able to still enjoy life, because plus majority is traveling constantly with work, with business, etc. So there's no way you could live off a meal plan anywhere. But we want you to still be able to eat the food you enjoy and still see results. But that also comes with being consistent as well, and disciplines. Like the weekends. The weekends still count. They're not like, the reason why I'm saying this, because I used to use the weekends as it's a weekend, let's, pizza and kebabs and things like that, let's eat. And it was just like spinning my wheels constantly, because the weekends were letting me down. So when I tightened up on the weekends and decided to make sure that I was following the plan to a T, this is when I seen changes. But as we know, along the journey, we all hit roadblocks, and it gets frustrating. It can get discouraging when the scale stops moving. But then we incorporate different things that's going to help with this. But to get to the bottom of what I'm trying to get at is, the more consistent you are throughout this journey, the better the results are going to be. And when you think like majority of people in here have signed up for 6 months, what you can achieve in 6 months is amazing. Like John, what was it, 55 pound, John? Chris,
Yeah, just about 55 pounds that first month. Yeah.
First 6 months, and
I'm sorry, first 6 months.
Yeah. So you can still make and get amazing results within that time. So what I'm trying to get across is consistency is key. And the more consistent you are, and like I say, as long as it's within your calories, there's nothing stopping you from having a beer, having a glass of wine, having a meal out with the wife, or partner, or whatever, husband, whatever. But it's all about having that discipline and being consistent to get there. And because, like I mentioned on my journey, it took me 5 years, which is a long time. It really is, to lose 140 pounds when really it should have took me 2 years. And plus, within that, I'm not going to lie, I did get help. I was on medication from the doctors at the time that helped speed it up. It wasn't like the ones that are out now, the GLP-1, semaglutide, or Ozempic and things. It was totally different to that. It didn't suppress my appetite. It regulated the fat. It was a fat regulator and metabolizer, but it wasn't a nice experience, so I didn't last very long with that. But ultimately, fat burners, things like that, we all know they don't really work unless they're illegal, and I wouldn't go down that route. Okay. So anyone else have anything?
So Craig, I think if I could just maybe add something to what you were saying about consistency. So just again, in terms of sharing a little bit about my journey, so I mentioned that I've been working with Craig for a little over 2 years. The first 6 months that I was working with Craig, I actually saw like very little by way of results. You know, like if I looked at my weight, like kind of when I ended that first 6 months versus the beginning, it like actually wasn't that materially different. And, you know, Craig and I, you know, kind of talked about that. And, you know, part of it was I was logging my food, but I wasn't actually measuring the food in many cases. And so, you know, you can, if you're doing that, you know, I was giving myself, let's just say, the benefit of the doubt in terms of, you know, the portion sizes or things like that, but, you know, probably convincing myself that I was, you know, within the target when in practice I was probably, you know, like 30 or 40% above it just because of, you know, that kind of stuff. With respect to the, you know, I mentioned that, you know, I had done some stuff in the past, like, you know, to John's point, you know, I had rallied myself at varying points to do a half marathon. At one point I did do a marathon that didn't go very well. I ended up, you know, walking the last 6-7 miles of it, you know, like that kind of thing. But anyway, like I also kind of was in this mentality of like, well, I'll listen to Craig, but on some level, like I know a little bit better, or you know, like that kind of a thing. And so I was like still kind of doing some of the stuff that I did previously that was like a little unsustainable with respect to training and whatnot, or kind of just still kind of doing my own thing. But now the good news is that at least I got into the habit of logging the food. I, you know, got into the habit of starting to do some weights. I had never done, to John's similar experience, I had never really done strength training, you know, kind of previously. So at least I got a little bit into that routine and, you know, started to get used to that. Now, if I contrast that with my second 6 months, you know, the second 6 months, I was like, all right, I'm actually going to listen to what Craig has to say, right? And, you know, it's not to say that you shouldn't bring your own experience and judgment and like intersect that with, you know, what, you know, Craig or John or Gaz has to share, you know, kind of as the experts. But, you know, then that second 6 months, that's when I then lost, you know, like 35 pounds, like my body composition, like, you know, massively shifted in terms of body fat percentage over the same period of time, you know, and I was like pretty astounded. And like the only real difference between the first 6 months and the second 6 months was not necessarily whether I was logging food or not, or whether or not I was actually exercising or like that kind of stuff. It was just like, am I actually doing it the right way? And am I actually like applying the principles the way that they're supposed to be applied? And like that's when I saw like the big step change in results. And that's, I think, for me at least, when like the light bulb went off to say like, oh, this doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be any like more work necessarily than it was previously. I just need to be smart about it and like kind of apply these like good principles, be consistent with it, be disciplined with it, and then, you know, integrate it, you know, kind of going forward. And so anyway, so that's just, you know, on that kind of consistency point, or, you know, kind of trusting the process, if you will.
Excellent.
That was for sure my experience over that first year, which is now kind of carried over into the last year as well, that, you know, I've been working with the team. So
That's great. Thanks for sharing that, Greg. Brilliant. Yeah. So yeah, and over the course of the next episodes, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be asking you guys, you know, we want you to ask questions. We any questions you're going to have is, you know, we will cover the best we can. The goal is to make these podcasts short, not too long, you know, so they're easy to watch, but, you know, obviously you can watch it in 1.5 times speed, which will speed it up. I wouldn't recommend 2 times because you probably won't understand, but the goal is the aim, sorry, should I say, is to cover as much of your topics as possible. Now, there will be times, you know, when we bring in some guest speakers in. Like I mentioned on the video I did the other week, that I am in talks with different people, you know, that specialize in different areas within the health and fitness. But also we need your help. We need your help. We need you to ask questions. You know, we want to make these interesting. We want these to be worth listening to on your daily walk. whilst you're getting them steps in. We want you to listen, be able to listen to them, you know, on at a time when you're bored or something like that, you know. But the main thing is get the questions in, ask us anything that you want, whatever you ask us. If we don't know the answer, we will find the answer from someone and make sure that it gets answered. Anyone else want to touch on anything, guys? Or should we?
I'm just going to jump in really quickly. And
Yeah.
it's something that I've learned, and I think Greg touched on it as well. And it's, I'm going to say something, and it might come across harsh, but it's the truth. And it's, there's no point of asking for help if we're not going to actually take the advice of the expert who's giving you the help. I think as humans, if we're doing something for a certain period of time by ourselves, we assume it's the right way. So when someone tells us a different way, if we're gonna let our ego dictate of how we're gonna behave, we're not gonna change. So you just have to kind of remove that ego part of you and just listen and be open to change, and you'll see the results. As Greg says, he thought, you know, this is the better way. I've been doing this. I'm gonna not listen or take the advice, and not see any changes. And long and behold, when you know remove that barrier, like, you know what, I'm just gonna do what he says, see what happens. And obviously Craig has made it's phenomenal amount of progress. So yeah.
Funny that you mentioned that, Gary, because the other day I was just actually, I saw a funny meme that said, if you're going to hire a coach, for God's sakes, be coachable. And I mean, there's some, you know, there's some truth to that. I mean, the reality of it is, this is one of those industries where I think, I know I did, you know, I thought I knew best, right? And that's why you have experts like yourself, like Craig, you know, to guide through the process, like anything else. So, you know, the being consistent, following the plan, relentlessly following the plan, and then also acknowledging the point where you look back at the last week, the last month, and you don't really love the progress that you're seeing, and acknowledging, hey, maybe I didn't follow the plan. You know, did I log every scoop of peanut butter as I was walking by the pantry? You know, every spoonful of ice cream as I was walking by the freezer. So that, you know, that's an important piece of it too. The acknowledgement and the account and self accountability and the ability to say to the coach, I didn't follow the plan, and just acknowledging. So, you know, good stuff.
Excellent. So, right, we'll keep it as a short one. This one, more of an introduction podcast on our first episode. So, guys, get your questions in. If you don't want to get them in the group, in the channel, then send it to one of us direct, or speak to your coach. You know, anything that you want covering, obviously the coach will cover, but, you know, we want your questions. We want to answer your questions. And again, like I say, make it as interesting as possible, but most importantly, educate you guys, because that's what we're all about at Evidence-Based Coaching. We don't want people leaving this program, going away and putting up, well, if the goal is to weight loss, once you've lost the weight, once you've lost the body fat, we don't want you knocking on our door in 12 months' time saying, can I come back? So I've gained it all back on. You know, we want to educate you to get to your goal, to get to where you want to be happy and enjoy life. Okay. Thanks, guys. Anything else from anyone else before we go?
No, just looking forward to it. This is great.
Thank you.
Good stuff, Tim.